I'm already in the corner. Anyways, I wanted to do a video because I got a comment on how Annie is unsafe. And I don't teach it. I don't teach her to respect my space. And it could be dangerous. And there's validity to it. But I'm going to let you guys be the judge of that. I have set myself up to fail. I have a carrot in each one of my jacket pockets. And I am going to just be. I'm going to speed up this footage and I'll talk over it a little later. I'm going to back up so you can see the full scene of Annie, who almost never leaves me alone. and I'll discuss my thoughts as I'm going to listen to music, so I'm deaf. And I'm going to essentially pay as little attention as I can to her. So that's setting the scene up. Annie, if you're new here, is a 1 3/4 old Mustang / BC Wildie, a horse off the range here in British Columbia, Canada, that I brought here just under a year ago. So I'm going to back up. And now I'm just going to relax. I think it's important to note that this isn't the safest activity to do because I can't hear anything. And if something weird were to happen, she could jump into me. So I don't recommend doing this, but this is the experiment. Now I've slowed it down here to normal speed to give you an indication of what I do when she tries to do something that is undesirable. Right there, she tried to chew on my jacket just briefly. And you can kind of hear her mouth open. And then all I do is make a noise and shuffle a little bit, and she makes some space around me. Now she's searching out these carrots, and it's really up to the person who is with the horse or whether or not they want to let them be this close, sniff this much. It's up to you to whether or not you want to allow this amount of interaction. Now I'm trying not to really do anything or indicate anything while she's around me. I'm letting her just sniff and check me out and hang around. She's keeping a decent space. But as you can see here, she sort of loses patience, and I have to get her to step back a little bit. Just another reminder that touching me in such a way is just not an option. So this experiment lasted about 20 minutes, and I've sped it up obviously a lot. Otherwise it would be incredibly boring to probably watch. And here we have one more where I try to do as little as I need to and then immediately go back to just being really relaxed. And I think that the way she acts from this point forward gives us an indication that there is a real understanding of what can and can't be done, and how close she can kind of get, and how aware she needs to be, and how quick I can move. I'm very reliable, I'm very consistent. Every time she reaches out too much, tries to do too much contact, she gets the exact same result. Where she can kind of experiment and sort of wander around me and sniff and check me out and essentially ask, because she knows that the carrots are there. She knows she wants carrots, and they smell really good. She just gotta wait for me to give them to her. Now, interestingly, throughout this experiment, Annie did a lot of yawning. This is her second and third yawn that she's kind of done as she's wandered around me. And we zip through another minute or two. And after a little bit more sniffing, she goes back to yawning again. I find this stuff really interesting because there's a lot of theory on why horses yawn or sort of stretch their jaws or open them up. But I imagine that there is a bit of sort of stress. When she came up beside me, she's essentially wondering if I'm going to scratch her. I've given no indication that I'm going to touch her or really pay much attention to her. So she quickly gave that up, back to carrots. This part I've slowed down because when she was doing this, I mean, I don't recommend anybody do this, but it was so ticklish, I could barely stand it. But I just stood there like a statue, real quiet. And you'd be amazed at how gentle horses can be. But I don't really recommend it because they get pretty close, and and it's near your face. So if a fly were to come around, there's no flies right now, but they could lift their head really fast and bump you, and it's just not a good idea. But you can see she just continues to sort of check me out and sniff and wander around me. Here's a couple more yawns. And it's interesting. I think there were a total of, what, eight or nine yawns throughout this whole procedure of her wandering around me and checking things out and touching and sniffing and then looking off and relaxing. And I think that to a horse, when you get in this state of just quiet and your communication is really clear, it's concise, it's very efficient, and they can really rely on it. They know how far they can kind of go. And it begs the question, as she kind of travels around me and I let her do this, is she respecting my space? Is she respecting my actions? Does she understand my intent? Does she understand what I want, what I don't want? And do I have control of my space? Is this a safe space for me and even her? Does she feel safe? And I think the farther you go down the road of horse training, the more you kind of find those variables. You kind of find the ability to move a little this way and a little that way, and continue to try your best to create a relationship that is a little bit more symbiotic in comparison to just being the boss or being the one that, as they call it, the one that moves the other's feet. Now that isn't a good thing to do, as we'll see shortly. I'll come near the end of the experiment. I almost finished my coffee, and I wanted to demonstrate, if I move into her space, what will she do? And I'm not aggressive, I'm just pressing into her space. I'm pressing into her, no different than she pressed into me, except I didn't move. And we can kind of look at this in real time and see how many seconds or how long it takes for her to shuffle around and make a little space, and whether or not she cares about me being in that space or not. And then finally we call this an end. I think we can call that a conclusion to today's experiment. So hopefully that has been very interesting, and I'll see you guys in the next one.